A poor African girl sang on her knees to feed her family, until an Arab executive said, "Stop." She was just 9 years old, barefoot on the dust-covered tiles of a crowded market, her knees scraped and voice cracking as she sang for strangers who barely looked her way. Her song wasn't pretty. It was raw, desperate, and it was all she had. Every coin that dropped into her plastic bowl meant one more day her siblings might eat. But one man stopped. He didn't drop money. He didn't look away. He simply said, "Stop." And what happened after that changed her life, and his, in a way no one could have imagined. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. Because this isn't just about charity. It's about the moment when one voice, small, trembling, and unheard, collides with a heart powerful enough to lift it from the dust. The sun was unforgiving in the heart of the capital. It beat down on the market stalls until the metal rooftops shimmered and the scent of roasting peanuts mixed with diesel from tuk-tuks and delivery trucks. Voices filled the air, bargaining, laughing, shouting. And beneath them, almost drowned out, was singing. Off to the side of a produce stand where flies circled ripe bananas and wilted greens, a small girl knelt on a torn mat. Her dark knees were dusty and raw. Her hair, braided in uneven lines, clung to her forehead with sweat. Her dress, once yellow, was now closer to brown, its seams stretched by time. She sang with a voice far too old for her tiny frame, raspy, hollow, pleading. Few stopped to listen. Fewer still dropped coins into the faded plastic bowl in front of her. But Faris al-Najjar did. He had only meant to pass through. The Saudi-born executive had flown into the city that morning for a conference on urban development, another bullet point on his endless itinerary. His driver had taken a shortcut through the market to avoid a traffic jam, and a slow-moving fruit cart had forced the car to halt. That's when he heard it. Not a song. A cry shaped like melody. He stepped out of the car. His assistant immediately protested. "Sir, we're running late." But Faris ignored him. He walked toward the sound, following it through the crowd like a man in a trance. And then he saw her. She didn't look up. Her eyes were closed. Her voice shook on every note. Her small fingers curled at her sides like she was holding back pain. "Stop," he said. The girl's eyes snapped open. She flinched and froze, mid-verse. Faris crouched, ignoring the curious glances from bystanders. "What's your name?" She stared at him, lips trembling. Tandeka." "How old are you?" 9. "Where's your family?" "Home. Mama's sick. I sing for rice." His throat tightened. She looked down. "I can sing something else. Please, don't be angry." "I'm not angry. Then why did you tell me to stop? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a clean white handkerchief. He held it out. Because it's not your job to beg the world for kindness, he said gently. It's the world's job to give it. She blinked. Faris turned to his assistant, who had finally caught up. Cancel my afternoon. All of it. Sir? I said cancel it. Then he turned back to Tandeka. Where's your home? She hesitated. You want to see where we live? Yes, he said. I do. The neighborhood was barely more than a slum on the city's edge. Makeshift huts of wood, tin, and tarp. Open drains, barefoot children, smoke rising from cooking fires that burned scraps of charcoal. Faris had visited refugee camps and low-income housing zones in his youth, but nothing prepared him for the sight of Tandeka's world. Her house was a single room. Her mother lay curled on a straw mat, her frame thin and brittle with fever. Two younger siblings, no older than 4 and 5, clung to her weakly. They didn't speak. Tandeka introduced him with quiet dignity. This is the man who made me stop singing. Her mother tried to sit up, but collapsed in a fit of coughing. Faris knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. You need help, he said. All of you do. The mother's lips barely moved. We don't take pity. This isn't pity, Faris replied. This is purpose. And with those words, something shifted. That night, Tandeka didn't kneel on the street. She ate rice with vegetables. She bathed in clean water. She slept in a bed Faris had ordered delivered from the city, along with blankets, medicine, and food. But something else had also changed. Faris had seen desperation before. He'd grown up with stories of struggle, of relatives who built legacies from sand and sweat. But this was different. This was a voice that pierced through concrete and silence, and for the first time in years, the man who had everything couldn't walk away. He had no idea that this girl's voice would soon echo far beyond the streets, and that he wasn't saving her. She was about to save him. Faris al-Najjar didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his hotel suite, the city's lights flickering beyond the tinted glass, his untouched dinner cold on the table beside him. He had held billion-dollar contracts in his hands. He had shaken hands with presidents, sheikhs, and CEOs. But the image that haunted him now wasn't from a boardroom. It was a little girl's cracked voice trembling over a dusty plastic bowl. Tandeka. He whispered her name to himself, trying to make sense of the strange knot in his chest. What was it about her? The desperation in her eyes, the way she tried to smile even while her knees bled through the dirt? Or was it the song itself, a tune with no formal structure, yet more honest than any performance he had ever witnessed? He picked up his phone and called his assistant. Find me the best pediatric doctor in the city. I want them at Tandeka's house by morning. Yes, sir. And one more thing. Call my team in Dubai. Tell them I won't be back this week. cancel everything. The assistant paused. "Are you sure, sir?" "I've never been more sure of anything." At sunrise, Tandeka opened her eyes to the sound of voices. Calm, gentle, professional. 2 doctors stood beside her mother, checking vitals, adjusting IV fluid. Her younger siblings were already eating bananas and drinking clean water from labeled bottles. She looked up and saw him again. Faris, standing quietly in the doorway of their small home, dressed not in a suit, but in simple light linen. No bodyguards, no entourage. He crouched down as she approached. "Good morning," he said. "Why are you here again?" "Because I wanted to see how your song ended." She tilted her head. "But I stopped singing." He smiled softly. "Not in my head." That morning, Faris took Tandeka and her siblings to a school nearby. Not the kind with crumbling chalkboards and overcrowded rooms, but a private institution with gates, uniforms, and music programs. He had already paid for their enrollment. Tandeka had never worn shoes that didn't pinch her feet. She'd never eaten lunch that wasn't shared between 4 people. Now she stared at the cafeteria, wide-eyed, her small hand gripping his. "I don't belong here," she whispered. Faris looked down. "Neither did I once. But someone let me in. Now it's your turn." He didn't just pay for her education. He went further. He met with the principal, arranged private voice lessons twice a week, and even brought in a vocal coach from Cape Town to assess her natural talent. The coach was stunned. "She has no formal training," the woman said, "but she sings like someone who knows pain. That's something you can't teach." Faris nodded. "Then help her find a way to turn pain into power." Within a month, Tandeka had a uniform, a backpack, and a place where she belonged. But it was never just about charity. Faris wasn't interested in headlines or foundations named after him. This wasn't a project. It was personal. Each afternoon, he returned from his meetings and drove straight to the school. Sometimes he brought books, sometimes juice boxes, but mostly he just listened to her questions, to her stories, to her dreams. One day, as they sat under a jacaranda tree near the schoolyard, Tandeka asked, "What do you do?" Faris chuckled. "That's hard to explain." "Do you sing?" He smiled. "Not very well." "Then why do you help me?" He looked at her for a long moment before replying. "Because I used to think building buildings was the only way to leave something behind. But now I know building someone means more." She didn't respond right away. Then she whispered, "I want to build someone one day, too." In that moment, Faris felt something shift inside him, a warmth he hadn't known in years. He didn't say it aloud, but he knew it. Tandeka wasn't just part of his week. She had become part of his purpose. But while one life was being rebuilt, another, his own, was about to be tested in ways he didn't see coming. Because the past has a way of knocking. Even when the door feels newly opened, The letter arrived in a white envelope with gold trim, delivered to Faris's hotel by private courier. No return address, just his name, written in a bold, familiar script that made his fingers freeze the moment he saw it. He knew who it was from before he opened it. "Your actions are embarrassing our family. Return to Riyadh immediately or face a formal inquiry from the board. This behavior, sponsoring street children in foreign countries, is beneath your station. You are no longer acting as an al-Najjar. You are acting as a liability." There was no signature. There didn't need to be. His older brother, Khalid, the heir, the voice of the family's empire, the man who had never taken a single step without approval from their father, and who now viewed Faris's every move as a threat to their carefully built image. Faris folded the letter once and placed it back into the envelope. Then he tore it in half. He had expected resistance, but not this quickly, and not with such venom. Still, he said nothing to Thandeka. That afternoon, as she practiced scales with her vocal coach in the courtyard of the school, Faris sat on a bench beneath the same jacaranda tree and listened quietly. Her voice had grown stronger, clearer, but it hadn't lost its ache. She still sang like a girl trying to reach someone just out of sight. The coach turned to Faris. "She's ready." "For what?" "For a stage." He frowned. "She's only 9. "She doesn't need the stadium," the coach said. "But she needs to be heard. Her voice isn't just music, it's testimony." Faris looked at Thandeka, now humming to herself in the shade. He nodded. The next day, he made the call. A friend of his, a Lebanese philanthropist, was organizing a private gala in Nairobi to raise funds for displaced children. It was elegant but intimate. No press, no paparazzi, just donors and decision-makers. When Faris asked if Thandeka could sing, the friend hesitated. "She's not trained." "She doesn't need training," Faris replied. "She needs a microphone." It was arranged. But on the morning of the flight, Thandeka went silent. She stood in her school uniform, suitcase packed, hair tied neatly, but her eyes were distant. Faris crouched beside her. "What is it?" "What if they laugh?" she whispered. "They won't. You don't know that." He smiled gently. "No, I don't. But I know what happens if you don't sing." "What?" "Nothing. And you were never meant for nothing." That night, in a ballroom draped in candlelight and soft gold, Thandeka stood on a small stage before 50 powerful strangers. She wore a plain white dress and held the microphone with both hands, her knuckles pale from gripping too tightly. Faris sat in the front row, his heart pounding louder than the music. She looked at him once. He nodded. And then she sang. No band, no backup, just her voice, clear, trembling and raw, filling the room like a prayer no one expected. She didn't sing a song from a book. She sang what she remembered. The one she used to sing on her knees on dusty concrete when coins were all that mattered. But this time, it wasn't desperation. It was power. When she finished, there was silence. Then applause, long, rising, unapologetic. Thandeka's hands shook as she stepped off the stage. She walked straight to Faris and buried her face in his jacket. "You didn't tell me it would feel like this." He held her close. "That's because I didn't know." That night, offers came in, not for money, but for opportunity. Scholarships, voice training, even a chance to sing again in front of an international school in Geneva. Faris turned them all down. "She's not a product," he told them. "She's a person, one step at a time." But when they returned to the city, things had changed. Reporters were now outside the school gates. A headline had leaked from someone at the gala. "Arab billionaire sponsors African street singer. Secret visit sparks family feud." Faris read the article in silence. Thandeka was on the cover. And so was he. Because kindness in the spotlight doesn't stay kind for long, and the world was about to test whether his choice was a moment or a revolution. The gate outside Thandeka's school was no longer a gate. It had become a checkpoint. Reporters lined up with cameras, shouting questions in 3 languages. Some called Faris a hero. Others called him a publicity seeker. A few used harsher words. "Aren't you exploiting this child for a redemption arc? Are you planning to adopt her? Is this just a PR stunt for your failing family empire?" Faris said nothing. He shielded Thandeka with his coat as they pushed through the crowd. She clutched his hand, eyes wide and silent. Inside the school building, the principal looked at him with a nervous smile. "We're concerned," she said carefully. "This level of attention isn't safe. The other parents are asking questions." "I understand," Faris said. "We'll make arrangements." They moved Thandeka to a temporary housing facility outside the city. A secure villa owned by one of Faris's business partners. There was space, privacy, and quiet. But Thandeka didn't sing that week, not even to herself. Faris sat beside her one evening as she picked at her dinner. "You're safe now," he said gently. "I'm not afraid," she replied without looking up. "I'm tired." He nodded. "I know the feeling." She paused, then whispered, "Why do people hate things they don't understand?" Faris leaned back. "Because understanding takes work, and kindness takes courage. Most people settle for comfort instead." He wanted to tell her not to worry, that this storm would pass, but he had learned the hard way. Not every storm leaves when you ask it to. The next day, Faris's brother Khalid arrived in the city, unannounced. He didn't bother with bodyguards or press. He walked into Faris's hotel and sat at the corner of the lobby bar, sipping strong Arabic coffee as if he owned the place. Because technically, he did. Faris joined him reluctantly. I assume this is about the articles, he said. Khalid didn't smile. This is about disgrace. To who? To our family, to the board, to everyone who's ever trusted the Al-Najjar name. Faris met his eyes. I didn't ask for their trust. You were born with it, Khalid said coldly. And now you're throwing it away for a child who doesn't belong in our world. Faris's jaw tightened. She belongs in a world that sees her. She's a project, Faris. She's a person. Khalid's voice dropped. You're embarrassing us, and yourself. There was a pause. Then Faris stood. I'd rather be embarrassed than empty. He walked away. That night, Faris sat outside Tandeka's room, watching the stars from the garden. He had always believed in logic, in calculated steps, but nothing about this felt calculated anymore. It felt necessary. Tandeka opened the sliding door and stepped into the moonlight. Will they take me away from you? She asked. He turned. No. You sound unsure. Faris exhaled. Because people like my brother think I've lost control. Have you? He looked at her. No, he said. I've just finally chosen something no one understands, including me. She sat beside him, barefoot on the cool stone. You told me once that building someone means more than building things. I remember. So what happens if I break? He turned to her, his voice barely a whisper. Then we rebuild. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The moonlight painted everything in silver. Then Tandeka reached for his hand. Do I still get to sing? He nodded. Whenever you want. She smiled. Even when no one's listening? Especially then. But someone was listening, from a distance in the dark. A photographer with a long lens and a hunger for scandal. The next morning, a new headline appeared. Billionaire caught sharing private moment with child protégé. Is this the line? And just like that, what was pure became polluted. Not because of what it was, but because the world wasn't ready for a bond that didn't fit a narrative. And Faris knew. The real fight was just beginning. The headline broke him in ways the previous ones hadn't. Faris had weathered accusations of elitism, nepotism, and even cultural betrayal. But this was something else entirely. The photo had been taken without context. He and Tandeka sitting side by side beneath the moonlight, her small hand wrapped around his, both of them barefoot and quiet. The article twisted it into something insidious, asking loaded questions without ever making outright claims. But it was enough. Enough for calls to flood into his office from sponsors. Enough for legal teams to begin whispering about liability. Enough to put everything at risk. Tandeka's safety, his reputation, even the quiet dignity of the bond they had built. By noon, Faris received an official letter from the Al-Najjar board suspending his voting rights, pending investigation of conduct harmful to brand integrity. His personal bank accounts were flagged. Interviews were requested by global media outlets. And outside the villa where Tandeka was staying, protesters had begun to gather. Not many, but loud enough to be dangerous. Faris locked the gate. He increased security. But the damage was already leaking in. Inside, Tandeka sat in the hallway with her knees pulled to her chest. Her little backpack rested beside her, zipped tightly. She looked up as Faris entered. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. His heart cracked. "No," he said, kneeling. "You did everything right." "Then why do they say bad things?" He looked away. "Because they don't understand." There was a beat of silence. "Should I stop singing again?" she asked. Faris shook his head. "Your voice is the only honest thing in all of this." She hesitated, then said, "I don't want you to be hurt because of me." Faris took her hand gently. "You're not what's hurting me. What's hurting me is a world that's forgotten what it means to care." Later that night, he called Layla Omar, an old friend from London, a powerful human rights advocate with a reputation for doing what others were too afraid to. He explained everything: the girl, the story, the press, the photos, the threats. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then Layla said, "Let me handle it." Within 48 hours, she organized a live broadcast, a digital event titled Beyond the Headlines, a conversation with Faris Al-Najjar and the girl who sings. The goal: reclaim the narrative. Let them speak in their own words. Faris was hesitant, Tandeka more so. But when Layla asked her softly, "Do you want the world to know who you really are?" The girl nodded. So, they did it. In a quiet studio, under soft lights, Tandeka sat on a velvet stool with Faris beside her. No makeup, no cue cards, just truth. Layla led gently. "Tandeka," she said, "do you know why people are talking about you?" The girl nodded. "Because I sang." "And what did you sing for?" Her voice was quiet. "For rice. For my mama. And for hope. And this man?" Layla gestured to Faris. "Why do you trust him?" Tandeka looked up at him, then at the camera. "Because when everyone else saw someone dirty or loud or in the way, he saw someone worth listening to." Layla turned to Faris. "Why her?" He didn't hesitate. "Because she reminded me who I used to be. Someone who wanted to be heard. Someone who believed the world could be better than the one we were born into." The broadcast ended with a simple performance. Tandeka singing the same raw melody she had sung on the streets. No music, no polish, just her. Within hours, the internet lit up. A girl who sings like she's telling your story. Maybe we've misunderstood them both. That voice didn't need saving. It needed space. Donations poured in. Support messages flooded Layla's inbox. And most shocking of all, an internal leak from the Al-Najjar boardroom revealed that several members had voted against Khalid's push for legal action. Quiet support was rising from within, but not everyone was celebrating. Someone, somewhere, wasn't done fighting. Because the more light you bring to truth, the more shadows try to swallow it. And the next move would come from the one man who hadn't yet spoken publicly, Zaid's father. The private jet touched down just before sunrise. No one saw it land, no reporters, no flashing cameras, just a single black SUV waiting at the far end of the runway with tinted windows and the emblem of the Al-Najjar family pressed into the chrome of its door. Out stepped Sheikh Hamdan Al-Najjar, father of Faris and Khalid, and the man who built the empire his sons were now fighting over. He hadn't spoken publicly in nearly 5 years, not since the death of Faris's mother. He was a man of few words and long shadows, feared in boardrooms, revered by politicians, and obeyed without question. And now, at 73, he had flown across continents not for business, but for blood. He met Faris alone. No guards, no lawyers, just father and son in the courtyard of a villa that still smelled faintly of jasmine and smoke. Tandeka was inside, unaware. The staff had been dismissed. The only sounds were distant birds and the soft hum of tension between two men who hadn't spoken in years without a filter. "I warned you once," Hamdan said, "about choosing emotions over legacy." Faris stood tall, but his heart pounded. "And I told you I wouldn't repeat your silence. She is not your child. No. She's someone's child, and she deserves more than the world gave her." Hamdan's eyes narrowed. "And what do you get from this? Applause? Pity? Redemption?" "I get to feel human again." For a moment, the old man said nothing. Then slowly, he walked to a nearby table and sat down. It surprised Faris. His father never sat in confrontations. He commanded them. But this time, he looked tired. "She reminds me of your mother," Hamdan said finally. Faris blinked. "She sang like that once," his father continued, "in a refugee camp in Sudan. I heard her before I ever saw her face. That voice. It stopped time." Faris sat cautiously. "I married her against every tradition," Hamdan said, his voice low. "Lost contracts, lost friends. But I didn't care. Until I did." He looked up at his son. "And I spent the rest of her life pretending not to remember what made me choose her." Faris felt the air shift. "You're not mad at me," he said quietly. "You're afraid." "I'm old," Hamdan said. "And the older you get, the more you try to protect the wrong things. Name, pride, appearances." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. I came here to tell you to stop, to sever this, to protect the family. But instead, he slid the box across the table. Faris opened it. Inside was a gold pendant, shaped like a flame, engraved with his mother's name in Arabic. She told me once, Hamdan said, his voice cracking, that the only legacy worth having was a hand held in the dark. Faris swallowed hard. What are you saying? He asked. I'm saying the board is watching. The world is listening, and you've done what I never could. He stood again. I won't stop you. But I won't save you either. I don't need saving, Faris said, rising too. Hamdan gave him a long look. Then maybe. I raised you right after all. He left without another word. That evening, Faris returned to the villa and found Tandeka sitting at the piano, her fingers tapping uncertain keys. You look tired, she said. I saw my father today. She paused. Is he angry? No, Faris said. He's remembering. She smiled gently, then patted the space beside her on the bench. Want to learn something? He chuckled. I'm terrible at music. That's okay, she whispered. You already gave me the melody. I'll teach you the rest. They sat side by side, two silhouettes against the fading sun, their hands moving slowly across the keys, not perfect, but together. Outside, the world still buzzed, but inside that room, for the first time, the past and future met in quiet harmony, and the girl, who once sang for survival, was now playing for joy. A year later, Tandeka stood on the stage of a modest concert hall in Geneva. She wore a white dress, clean, simple, proud. Her hair was braided with small golden threads, and her feet, once bare on hot concrete, now rested on polished wood beneath warm lights. The room was quiet. The world was listening. She sang the same song, the one from the market, the one from her knees, but this time her voice didn't tremble. It soared. In the front row, Faris watched with tears he didn't try to hide. He didn't wear a tuxedo or a title, just a grey blazer and the gold pendant from his mother around his neck. She finished. Silence. Then a standing ovation. Not because she hit the notes perfectly, but because her voice had survived. Backstage, she ran into Faris's arms. I did it, she whispered. No, he said, holding her close. We did. Later, they walked under the night sky, hand in hand like father and daughter. No contracts, no headlines, just belonging. The world had tried to rewrite their story, but they had written it louder. Because in the end, it wasn't about charity. It was about choosing someone and staying. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes one voice, no matter how small, can change everything.